Hello, crypto boys and ghouls, and welcome back to the channel, Tales from the Cryptmancer, where we feature content on play and earn games on the blockchain, such as Splinterlands. And in today's video, I wanted to feature a conversation, a deep dive conversation with Virus, who joined us for an episode of Splinterlands TV this past weekend. And we talked a lot about land. We talked a lot about battle strategies and all things Splinterlands. And I wanted to share the entire conversation uncut here on this video. So let's hop into it. It is a lengthy discussion. Let it run. Could be your podcast for the week ahead. And until next time, keep stacking those stats.
But yeah, I was just knocking out some tournaments and working my spreadsheet to try to get everything ready for land. So
I know. The spreadsheet's evolving, probably adding more columns and more tabs and all that good stuff, right? If you're anything like me.
yep, yeah, I'm trying to figure out I have two guys left to play, or that I need to play. So I'm trying to dig out which cards I want to combine to put in there.
Nice. Well, it sounds like you're locked and loaded and ready to go.
Just about. I mean, I'm ready to go for now, but I have plans for the future with it. So
Yeah, and I'm curious. I want to talk to you about that. What the plans for the future are looking like, because obviously, you've probably seen some of my videos on like a day one strategy and a day two strategy, right? Because it's probably going to change over time. And what you get started with is probably not what you're going to roll with, 2 months into land, right?
yeah, definitely. I think I have my my initial. Mine's pretty similar to yours. It's kind of funny. We kind of lined up with our thought process. I think with our day one and day two strategies.
Just don't tell anyone that because you might get a little hate.
yeah, no. There's some other conflicting thoughts on those strategies, but I mean, I respect where they're coming from, but I see things, I think, as I'm wanting to work them, at least for mine.
Yeah, exactly. I think, what's interesting is, I guess the question would be, um, do you see yourself buying more land after like day 2, day 7, day 30, day 60, depending on what happens? And what would be the qualifications for you to consider buying additional land, as an example?
So I think there's a lot that could happen after the first few days. I mean, after, I guess, the first few days and the first couple weeks and whatnot, there's going to be hype right in the beginning. Everyone's going to be wanting to figure everything out and put their land down, and there's going to be people that are going to be figuring out that I don't have enough grain to work to get SBS, so I need to just work all grain. There'll be a lot of changing right in the beginning to figure out what they want to do. And then there'll be some people that will figure out that, oh, I don't really have enough to work on this, or I'm not getting enough out of it. So there may be a little bit of a sell-off of plots, possibly, within the first month or so. And if that's the case, then I've been on the lookout the whole time for any kind of plots that have been in my region for sale. But for whatever reason, Area 51 that I'm in comes at a very high premium when it comes to other plots. So our cheapest plot is $70 in Region 51, whereas I think most of the other regions, there's a number of plots that are $39 to $40 right now.
Mm.
So I'll definitely be on the lookout, and especially because once we have the Soulbound unlock, I'm going to have an extra 10 to 12 cards that I'll be able to put out on land.
Yeah, which that's kind of ties into the question of, if you have some of these cards that are going to have some good production value, does it make sense to then buy some land for them? If for example you have gold foils extra that you normally wouldn't have, like if they were actually real cards, right? So it's interesting, and I guess a follow-up question would be, if land in Area 51 doesn't come down in price, but let's say land prices drop across the board. Let's say maybe land comes down to $50 in area 51 and it's $25 in area 15, right? Let's just say.
Mhm.
Would you consider buying like multiple plots, like a 2-to-1 ratio in another region, perhaps?
And
If the opportunity came up where you could have actually two regions potentially,
yeah.
if the prices were right.
So right now I have one plot that I kind of, bought out someone else's they had sold off, and so I bought their DEC and they had a land plot left. So I kind of I bought that with the DEC that I bought from the person that was selling off. So with that I have one plot in region 117, I think.
Mhm.
And that's one of the regions that is selling pretty cheap plots. So I was that's one of the thoughts I've had is, do I want like a little outpost out there, to just put on whatever cards are left out there, and just work grain or something like that out there and kind of get in the pools on that spot.
Mhm.
That is a thought that I've been thinking about, is kind of getting a little lower cost entry outpost going in a different region.
Interesting. And out of curiosity, I'm wondering what the meta gaming instinct in you says, when it comes to research points, because what I think Matt has said, what the team has said, is that the secret separatory and the research points will be, uh, I think, at a minimum region based,
Mhm.
um, possibly territory based. So, are there potentially some advantages perhaps about having research points spread across the map? I don't know. I'm not sure how they're going to um, manage that reward system, right? Because if you have all your research points in a single region or territory, right, and that territory is not doing good on like the leaderboards or the contests or for unlocking purposes or whatever, but all of a sudden you have stuff sprinkled everywhere, can you, double dip, so to speak, in rewards by having your research spread out? I don't know if we have the answer to that question, but it could be something to speculate on, perhaps, with Land 2.0 or Secret Separatoria, even maybe before 2.0, for those type of rewards. I don't know if you thought about that at all.
Yeah, I mean, it is so tough to tell, like, without actually knowing what research is going to do. So, there's that idea of, like you were saying, that there might be a benefit to having a little bit in different places. But let's just say, I mean, this is kind of it kind of goes against some things that they've said. But what if you needed research tokens in order to make your level 2 grain building? So you can only build a level 2 or level 3 grain building in the region where you have the research done.
Mm,
If that was the case, then your plots that are not in your region where you've done your research would be at a large disadvantage.
right. Well, I guess the question is the research at the account level, or is it at the region level? For example, let's say you own one plot in region 117, but they're in that region, people are beasting on research, even though you're not specifically, and maybe the region has a ton of research points. Is the gate at the account level, at the region level? That's going to be the question, right? Because if it's at the region level, then maybe you don't even have to do any research. You can just piggyback on the keep owner or the castle owner or whatever, right?
Mhm. Yeah, and that's the thing, is that they have, mentioned things about things being at a region level or territory level. And I think that if they were to put research where you could, or if that was what was being used to determine your building levels and things like that, then it seems like it would be too big of a disadvantage for people that are spread out. But they've kind of said that you do want to stay, in the same region, kind of keep your plots together. So it is a possibility.
Mhm. Yeah, and
But
this is the crazy thing is we're kind of working without obviously perfect information. And I know Matt several months ago even was saying that he's already working on the 2.0 white paper and stuff. Um, and it was, already bigger than the existing 1.5 white paper. But, until we get some clarity on some of these topics, I mean, we might be frozen a little bit, right? As far as anything you do, just like the whole, you need a summoner for every plot of land type of prediction. You know, that didn't go so well for everyone who bought summoners at a, essentially a premium, right?
Yeah.
So anything you do is, obviously very speculative and very risky. So I don't know. I think it's, the more information, more clarity they can provide, whether it's on 2.0 land or even Secrets of Pretoria, I think it's better for the game and the player base. Because, and I think Aftersun has mentioned this as well, is if they don't clarify the point of research tokens or what the benefit's going to be, at least in some levels, not maybe the whole thing, but at least at some degree, then people are just either going to ignore it at their peril, perhaps, or they're going to be like doing things incorrectly, like we just talked about. Like depending on how it lines up, you could be in a really good spot or you could be in a really bad spot potentially.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a few things that are like that too. It's, the research, if that does limit the level of buildings you're able to build, and someone that did research is able to make on a single plot, a level 4 storage facility that can store all of the stuff he needs, but you don't have the research done in your region, so you can only build a level 1. You have to build 5 different buildings because of that. You're at a huge disadvantage. That's if that was like that. But one other thing too is that if we're not being clarified, just like all the 50 different types of resources too. Right now we're planning for how to get SPS, grain, and research tokens out of our plots, but if they're not really, we don't really know how those number of different resources are going to work. That's going to be a big change from how things are being planned out right now too.
Yeah,
So I have,
absolutely. I mean, there's gonna be lots of changes along the way that we're gonna have to adapt to. Like if you're an investor, like landholder, where you just buy land and set it and forget it on day one and come back in a year, you could be could be coming back to a mess, right? Because
mhm,
things could just stop working. And I want to go back to a point that you just brought up here, with storage. We know there's an idea of storage and we know there's an idea of transportation and stuff, but we really have no idea what storage means. Meaning, can you have multiple storage buildings on a plot of land, or are you limited to just one building on a plot of land and that's storage? And if so, is storage only from one type of resource, or can you store all types of resources? There's just so many questions around just the concept of storage that could have
mhm.
huge impacts on landholders, both big and small. For example,
Yeah,
if you own, let's say, 2 plots of land, that's what you own, and you're counting on, one to farm grain and one to farm a resource, but now you need storage to hold your resources when you put them in an LP, as an example, but you require a dedicated land plot for a storage building, and maybe it's a dedicated building per resource. The person with 2 land plots now has to like figure out, well, I got to buy another land plot, I got to buy a building, so there could be some real impacts that could be, either driving more demand for more land or such, or that could be just driving people out of the game of land because it's too expensive, right? I mean, we just don't know.
yeah, definitely. There'll be, and I mean, not just the storage, but whatever the processing building is going to be. So let's say that you have, a forest and you have another, a couple forests and a couple other plots that are like a Badlands and a Caldera or something like that. If you're probably going to want some kind of, if your main thing is going to be wood, you're probably going to have some kind of building that makes your wood more efficient. So the plots you're going to mine wood on more efficient. You're probably going to need some other building that stores just wood. So you're going to have to dedicate some other plot to just being the storage for that wood. And so you're gonna want to have on the buildings that you're focusing on whatever resource it is, probably whatever building it is that makes producing it more efficient. So there'll probably be a couple different types of building that are kind of for each research or resource type, I would assume. Probably the
Right.
storage and the processing building.
So you think there's going to be a processing or refinery type building to make these 50 types of resources, perhaps?
Yeah, I'm thinking there'll be like a, let's say, a logging building, if they're going to call it that, and that would increase your wood production by 5% for level one, and like maybe level two is like goes up to 12%, something like that.
Mhm.
So you can increase your wood production by having higher level buildings on that plot, but you also have to have a plot that's solely dedicated. I'm thinking at least to like wood storage. And so if you're producing, 8 different resource types, that means that you need, if the storage buildings are for only one particular resource, then that means you need 8 storage buildings. That's how many plots you can't have then that are having these production type buildings that are increasing your production. And
So
that's 100% speculation, but that's kind of what I'm thinking it might be.
right. So it's interesting because if there's a limitation of like one building per plot of land, I mean, obviously the the saying would be, bigger is better or more is better, right? Because the more land you have, the more flexibility you have to put your operation into refining or storing or harvesting or whatever. So if you have limited pieces of land, then you're going to be a little bit squeezed on your options on what you can do with land, right? Because of that limitation. We'll have to see if it is just one building per plot of land. The game design seems to indicate that, based on like the building in a box details and that starter package. It seems to be just one building per plot. But if that's a limiting factor, like you mentioned, for storage or for refining or whatever, um, I mean that's really gonna ramp up the cost, the overall cost of land for doing anything inland. Like if you have to have, to refine and store and farm just something as simple as grain or wood, you have to have a minimum of 3 individual plots of land plus all the grain and DEC staked and stuff. That's a big cost. So there needs to be some kind of, implied benefit, monetarily speaking, to justify that cost. Otherwise, land is just going to go unused because the cost will be more than the benefit, right? Because at the end of the day, the reason why you're doing this, yes, you're playing a game, sure, but the whole point of this game within Splinterlands is, part of a play and earn aspect, right? They're not printing tokens per se. I mean, I guess they are printing tokens. They're printing game tokens, right? Like it'll be a wood token, I guess, or in the game to go with the DEC LP for wood and DEC as an example. But the point is you're going to use DEC to essentially buy that token in the game to use it, right? Is that what we're getting towards?
Yeah, I mean, right. So it's initially, at least, for probably quite a while, it's going to be mainly just a DeFi game. You're putting in resources to generate other resources to build up how you're going to generate even more resources, and it'll probably be that way for quite a while. They may add features where there is competitive type things if they do region or territory wars where you get to attack other territories or regions, which would be awesome. But until 2.0, 2.0 is actually even about generating. I don't even know if the NFTs part's in there, but eventually you'll be generating spells and items that you can use in the game.
Yeah, and
But
that's
still, yeah, go ahead.
well, I would say that's 2.0, but I think even using items and spells in the game is like 3.0, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too.
Yeah. So yeah, you're right. I think we're gonna have to your point, really more of a DeFi landscape for probably the next, 6 months to a year at a minimum. Well, we might not even get the full DeFi platform until 6 months to a year, perhaps. But even then, after that, um, the game of land that we start with and that are, I wouldn't say we're stuck with, but that we're playing for the foreseeable future could really look drastically different than the end game for land, like
Yeah.
completely different.
Yep. And I mean, there's ideas that get thrown around, but we never know when things like that could actually come to fruition. I think Fart Petrov was in one of the channels and saying like, "Oh, how would you like to be able to attack another territory?" And that got me thinking like, "Oh, that'd be an actual competitive aspect of land.
Mhm.
That's not a DeFi type thing. I mean, maybe it will." The idea that I was thinking I had was, perhaps a or sort of like a guild brawl. Two territories could battle, and whoever won would get some kind of production boost for like the season or time frame whenever the next territory war would last.
Mhm.
So they could add in some kind, some actual gameplay to land, but the time frames when that's going to come out, I'm sure that if they were to ask, oh, what would you rather have 2.0 with all the resources, or us to add in a whole new game mode with territory battles, I think a lot of us,
The answer
the
is
gamer
yes,
types would,
both.
yeah, the gamer types would be like, yeah, give us the game. We want more game modes. But a lot of the people that are heavily invested in land and people that are really currently doing stuff with a lot of land would say, no, give us we want 2.0, get it here as quick as possible.
Right. Well, I think what's interesting with that statement is, um, they're really setting the table or the framework or the foundation for the future here. Because once you have land in place and you have these things working underneath of it, like the buildings and the resources and stuff, it's conceivable that to add things like a territory war that may be incorporated, you know, units or like not cards, but maybe land units, like things like towers or moats or walls or
Mhm.
whatever, right? That could be new NFTs in the game, perhaps, that have a new benefit. And then perhaps, because we both come from Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes as well. And there was territory wars in that game where you
Yeah.
took essentially your characters or what would be essentially in Splinterlands cards, and you basically did, I think it was like a every 4 or 5 days, like a brawl, like you just said, like a brawl kind of game mode where you got rewards in the game for participating, and you used in this case your cards in kind of a PvP, mode, right? So whether that's at the region level or whatever, or if that's at the player level, I mean, these are all things that could be done in the future with land. Um, so it's very interesting because once you have land working, really the sky's the limit on what you can do in Splinterlands with the NFTs, with the economy, with the market, with all of this in place. It really is probably the only Web3 game that is this far advanced that would really have the underpinnings of a functional land concept that could be expanded upon. Because if you look across the Web3 ecosystem, there's really no like land mode that could even hope to bring all of this type of functionality and complexity online anytime soon, right?
Yeah, as far as I know. I mean, I know that land was the big buzzword, for the last, or probably a couple years ago, and then for the last, or for the year after that. So there's a lot of Web3 games that were saying, oh, we're gonna sell land, but I don't know that they've quite implemented things or done enough that's quite at this level. That's using the NFTs that you have in game and using that with the land itself. I mean, I don't even know of a game that has land. I know that there's one that was big on land. Is it Alien Worlds?
I've never played it, but yeah, maybe.
There's one. I know that there's one game that has land, but I don't know the I can't think of it. It's one that I have not played. So,
Mhm.
but yeah, no, it's a huge effort on their part that they've been working on now for a good amount of time, and you're kind of seeing a lot with the delays currently of how big it actually is, and I think that they didn't even realize from their planning and development side how big doing something that's this big, how much effort it takes for QA in the end, because they don't normally do something that's quite this large.
Right. Yeah, I mean, if you listen to my chat with 12, Dwayne Cunningham, and we talked about the implications and of what land means to Splinterlands and how important it is for the future of the game and how much effort it really is going to take to deliver this, and all those points are, I think, valid in that this is, like it or not, this is a big part of the future of Splinterlands from an ecosystem and a game perspective. And it's going to continue to take a lot of resources to continue to build on it and maintain it. But at the same time, I get very excited about the possibilities that could be here as long as we get the runway and the time to see this through. I think that's the biggest, as I talked to Dwayne, that was my biggest concern is, you know, we have a limited runway that we're kind of on notice with. And, we want to extend that runway and we want the team to be able to deliver on the vision. And that's to me the scariest part of all this. But at the same time, I see, what this could be. And, yeah, Land 1.5 will probably not be super exciting. I mean, that's, we've talked about that on the stream before as well, as be prepared for some asset price dips, and that's okay because this version that's coming out is truly like an MVP, like a minimum viable product. It's not like what land is supposed to be. It's just the first step, the baby step, the first step of your the little Splinterlands land baby, right? And it's before it can become that marathon runner, at 21 years old or whatever. We've got to take a lot more steps. So
Yeah, and you have to think of the steps before this. We had the claiming your land plot, so there was that release, which and people were hyped about that too, but that was a smaller step than this one. Then there was surveying your land to be able to get the land type. And but you have to think too, I mean, the hype cycle for those was pretty quick. So
mhm.
there was people were interested in it. It was fun to claim your plots and stuff like that. And then it was fun to survey your plots. But for the most part, you haven't really heard anyone talking about the a big survey going on, I don't think, for a few months. So but so now I mean this is going to be another one where there's going to be a bunch of hype in the beginning when you're trying to figure out your plots. There's people that are, oh, I need to get, I didn't have the right type of cards. I thought I was gonna put all my cards on my occupied plots, and I was just gonna put the commons on my grain plots and be all right. And they have to buy, they might have to buy cards or,
Trade
take
cards.
cards off the rental market that they
Yeah.
had on there to work their other plots to kind of balance things out. So there's gonna be a lot of I mean, I find it fun. The balance and figuring out how to, get the numbers right that I want. It's kind of fun to play with. So they'll be hyped for a little bit with this one, but there's not too much to, just once you have your card set and then maybe trying to upgrade things here and there. There's not too much of a game wise to this part either.
Mhm.
So I mean, the hype will die down a bit once it is out.
Yeah, I could see that. And going back to your previous point, if we want to get some hype around a land survey, just find a track that you're sitting on in your back pocket that you've not surveyed yet, Virus, and send it my way, and we'll get some hype. But in the meantime, yeah, I think it's gonna be interesting. I think it's gonna be interesting to see how we can realize or see visually with Nate's team, giving us the UI here, because everything that we've done thus far, like you and I and others, have been in like spreadsheets, right? We're just spreadsheet jockeying the land game at this point because we can't see it in the game. But when we can see it in the game, it's going to be interesting moving off like a spreadsheet into the game and seeing what things like peak monsters or Splex or what have you can do really to improve the user experience and the game experience for land. And one of the things that I'm curious to see is how much of a game there is going to be. And what I mean when I say that is, how quickly can I change things or do things, and at what cost, or what's the penalty? We've already talked about things like a 24-hour cooldown to change gears of what you're farming, and then there's like a 3-day card cooldown. So it seems like from a game perspective, pure game perspective, if you want to make dynamic changes and move stuff around, it's not going to be easy or fast. At least it seems that way. Like today, for example, on the rental market, if you were renting cars, you could stop a rent, you could change a rent, you could relist a car just by the click of a button. And in the past, there was no penalty, really, right? Now you have to pay like a DEC fee or whatever, but one DEC, the grand scheme of things, probably not going to break anyone necessarily. But with land, if we're really talking about 72-hour cooldowns where you don't get any benefits or resources at that point, to play the game, actually to make changes, to like sell one card and swap in another card on a plot of land, if that's going to take the plot of land down for 3 days or more and give you no resources or no returns, that's scary. I'm not like, I don't want to change anything really unless I have to at that point, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just the card cooldown. When you take a card off of it, I think the plot itself only goes into the 1-day cooldown when you're changing the work site. So if you're
Mm-hmm.
changing from grain to SBS or something like that, or SBS to grain, which I was debating about being part of my initial strategy too, is that, I have for all of mine, I have the, what was the one with the time crystals and the grain?
Time vaults.
What was it called? The
Time
starting?
vaults.
Yeah, time vaults. So I've got time vaults for all my plots, which means I have, 15,000 grain for each of those. If I really wanted to min max my SPS, I could try to go full SPS until my grain runs out and then switch things over.
Mm-hmm.
But then I have to think about that 24-hour switchover period.
Yep.
So I'd have to have a cushion of enough grain to last the plots I leave as a SPS for 24 hours while I switch it over to grain.
Yep. Out of curiosity, so I've done this exercise, this fair exercise that you mentioned, because great minds think alike. And I calculated it to be, I could do 9 days of 100% SPS harvesting on day one, and then I would need to switch on day 9 because it would take me a day to move over to a self-sustained grain producing model. I don't know if you did the math on your plots, how many days you could get before you had to make that switch.
I had not actually figured out the time frame yet,
Okay.
and because I decided against. I thought I was just going to more balance things out, but probably try to do an extra couple plots for SPS. I think I was going to leave the extra grain I had as like a buffer, just in case I ever want to switch things around and I don't want to get stuck to have to buy grain.
Mm-hmm.
So it was an idea that I had, but I kind of decided just I was going to balance things out in the beginning for the most part.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think that's what makes land so interesting. Is there's just so many ways to play it, so to speak, and so many different strategies to look into how you're doing it. Now, one of the things that I'm torn with, when we talked about it on stream yesterday, was I want to build up my land and get better production points over time and bring more of my land online. Maybe look at it buying additional land in the future if I can get everything operational. But then I'm also thinking, man, there's some cards I want to buy. There's some packs I want to buy. Do I use land as kind of like um, a reinvestment stream to do other things in the game outside of land? And that's an interesting question as well. Is do you go all in on land and it's land or bust, like everything gets reallocated back into land, or do you take ice cream money off the table right away, or do you do other things? Have you thought about that? What that means for you? Let's say land, for example, in a hypothetical scenario. Let's say land generates you $10 a day in value in the game. What would you do with that $10 a day?
Well, so right now, I mean, I have different, uh, I guess, goals that I have in the game, and I'm playing in champion, but I'm renting SPS, for instance. So I would like to be off the rentals of SPS to where I could have everything I need on my own. And so for me, getting SPS out of land is part of reaching my goal of breaking even on SPS. So for me, I'm not selling off my profits from land to try to build up right now. That wasn't my thoughts with land. Um, but if I did meet those goals, or with being in YGG, we're getting a delegation of SPS uh, within the guild. Um, so if that's kind of meeting my goals, then I guess I'll have this surplus, and I can then think about how can I build up my land empire as well, because I would like to continue to build up that investment. And so it might break down to like a 50-50 kind of thing. 50% comes out to my goals in the game, and then 50% stays in land or gets reinvested into land to buying the next plot, or buying the card that's going to boost the production points on one of my rare plots, and I can kind of trickle things down to a common plot from there.
Mhm.
So I mean, there's a lot of different ways that you can think about, and I think it all depends on your individual goals in the game. There's another thing too. I mean, people that are just it, and it depends on where you're at in the game too. If you're still working on leveling cards within chaos, then you can take that money out and you could buy that card to level up the cards that you need. Um, so I think everyone's kind of in a different spot, but at least for me, my goal is to continue building up my staked SPS pool.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. I think the reason I asked that question is because I'm sure there's probably some people in the audience that own land that might be in a similar situation, and trying to figure out what their strategy might be. And I think the more we talk about it, the more ideas are out there, the more people can kind of come up with their own hybrid strategy or whatever for what they how they want to tackle the reinvestment part. Assuming there's reinvestments to be made. Maybe we shift gears a little bit and talk about land surfing, because I know there's been, I think, people like the idea, generally speaking. I think in the grand scheme of things, there's like a compromise between landowners and non-landowners when it comes to land surfing on the benefits there. But there's been, I think, some talk that it would be a hard pill to swallow for someone with cards, um, with DEC, to then surf on land and then potentially lose the time spent clearing land, or that kind of opportunity cost. There's been, I think, talk that, at least that I've heard, that why not just buy a plot of land at that point rather than risk it. What are your thoughts on the balance of land surfing? What kind of balance does there need to be, risk versus reward, at least from a perspective of someone that doesn't own land, as an example?
Yeah, and I think this is another one that comes up to how they actually end up implementing it. Because if they start off with saying only cleared plots can be surfed, um, then that's one thing. That's kind of like the owner had to put in the work, but that's not the idea of it. The idea is that they want to get the most land worked completely. Then it's going to mostly be uncleared plots that are going to be surfed on. So if you've then put in the time to clear a plot, and all it takes is someone with just higher PP cards to come in there and take that plot from you, that seems kind of nuts. That it can't work that way. That doesn't seem to work out. My thoughts that I would like them to implement would be some type of same sort of like how we have guild power. So you could have some kind of a saved up amount of work that you've done on a plot that you could then transfer over to another plot that you
Mhm.
wanted to surf.
I like that. I like that
So
idea.
so let's say that you can go into a plot and you could do X amount of work on it to clear the plot. And then someone comes in, they want to put their cards in there. If you were to then come off the plot, it would go back to being uncleared. And they would have to then clear it with their bigger PP cards if they were coming in there. I mean, it's just it seems like it's a little bit more complicated system, and that's not really what they do with the MVPs normally.
Mhm.
But I think that's the most equitable solution. If you're coming in there as a non-owner clearing a plot, you should be able to take that clearing action with you to the next plot that you want to work on.
Yeah, it's interesting, and maybe guild power is kind of like the the test ground for this for land surfing because, to your point, maybe as land, there's two types of data that's stored, right? There's the permanent clearing, like if you're the landowner and you clear the land, it's permanently cleared and anyone can surf it, you can surf it, it's or you can farm it, whatever, it's completely unlocked. But if you leave it out there and someone comes on and clears the land and starts working the land, it's like guild power, right? So if you kick them out of the guild or kick them off your land, any work that they've done goes away and you're reset back. So there's incentive as a land owner to not boot people off your land necessarily if you haven't done the effort to clear the land. Now, if you've already cleared the land yourself, then yeah, kick people off and put your stuff on because you don't care at that point. But it would be interesting to see if that is something that they implement. Um, I think what the bigger challenge would be is not between the landowner and the land surfer, but the competition between land surfer A and land surfer B. Like
Mhm.
if I'm land surfer A, I come on and I clear the land, I'm farming it, and then land surfer B comes in with bigger production points and wants to work the land. Um, as a landowner, I don't want to see that land plot go from cleared to uncleared, and now I have to wait for that new person to clear the land again, right? Hopefully, they're bringing maybe, like you said, a certain amount of production points, in guild power. Let's call it land power, right? That they can instantly clear the land, maybe that's the answer. But I could definitely see guild power being converted over to like a land power concept as part of land surfing.
Yeah. And I mean, you got to think how many occupied plots are going to be out there will not be worked in the beginning just because people have not, um, may not have the cards to work the land or might not be paying maybe more investors that have just kind of claimed their lands or surveyed them, but not actually planned to work the land in the beginning. There'll be a number and those will be competitive spots where people will be wanting to surf those lands in particular.
Hmm.
So there will be some competition between players for, those magical or occupied plots or maybe an epic plot that they're going to want to have the better cards on to get that bigger cut.
Right. Yeah, it's going to be interesting as well because when you have the complexities then of in let's say 2.0 with buildings being on land,
Mhm.
um, that just adds more complexity to it. Because like if you have a building, let's say it's a refinery, right, and you've leveled it up to level 3, and now a new land surfer comes on, you know, what kind of building are they going to put back on the land? They might have more production power and cards, but they may not have the land power to put a level 2 building on necessarily, right? So all of a sudden now you've lost productivity as a landowner, at least in the near term, right?
Yeah. And so I mean the land power concept I think seems like a better solution for that because you could take the work that you've done of building a building and then if you're booted off you can take it with you. So then if you go to surf another plot, then you can, get back to where you were with clearing and building a building on there.
Sure, the land surfer, yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. But for the landowner, perhaps it's maybe a little bit of a gamble because you might get more production power on your land, But if you get like a new player in the game that just, maybe puts some higher powered cards on there but has no like land power stored for those cards, um, that would be a step backwards for the land productivity, at least in the near
Yeah,
term.
and so I mean, what happens with the plot where the owner maybe was working the plot, built a building on there, but then just took the cards off of it? Would the surfer come on to a plot with a building with it already built? Would they be able to utilize it?
Yeah, I would think so. I think there has to be, I guess, this differentiator between permanent land and buildings. Like if you own the land and you've cleared the land, that land is always cleared, regardless of, I would think, the land power or whatever anyone else brings to the table. At that point, if you, the landowner, have done it yourself, it's kind of like unlocking a soulbound reward card. Once you've unlocked it, it's always unlocked, right? That's the concept, because you've paid the price in real time, real time crystals, real production points, real grain, or whatever, because you own it, right? It's permanent. Same thing would, my guess, would have to go for buildings. And the fact that if you built like a level 3 building on land and for some reason took your cards off the land and someone surfed it, there should always be at least a level 3 building there, right?
That's what I would assume. But and then you got to think too, the market's going to look crazy for those.
Yeah.
Peak monsters are going to have to put in some work to be able to show the differentiation when you're buying a plot that, oh, this one has a level 1 grain, storage grain storage building on it. This plot's just cleared, has no building on it, and this plot's it the the view of how to buy land and how that market's going to look is going to be pretty crazy to have to look through.
Yeah, and I guess a follow-up question to that is, do you think that kind of complexity is a good thing or a bad thing? I'll take a first cut at that. I think it's a good thing, because that kind of complexity from a game perspective is something that, as a civ player or a strategy player, that you want to dig into and understand and get good at, right? So I could see, this, if it's done right, even though it is complicated, could really extend to be something that would be desirable for people that don't play traditional Web3 or NFT games today. I could say, hey, look at this advanced economy and, strategy as part of this game. I can make money at it, and it's complex, and it's, engaging. So I think almost that kind of complexity might actually be a good for Splinterlands. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that so there's I mean, let's say the card game. The card game, it having something that makes it a lot more difficult to understand is a bad thing because you have a short period of time to kind of make your decision on things. The players that come in new to the game, they want to be able to understand the game as you want them to be able to understand the game as quick as possible to kind of get up and running and be able to play the game. Land itself is kind of a different beast. The fun is in the I guess play fun, but the devil's in the details of trying to figure out how to maximize your production for what you're trying to do. And so I think you could try to get pretty complex with how you want land to work and get the enjoyment out of really maximizing what you're doing. So I think they can go pretty complex with land.
Yeah, I think so. I think that, to your point, I think this type of game mode and game concept is probably good to have that level of strategy and detail involved with it. Now, as a content creator, it's also good because it provides lots of opportunity to create content and maybe do some interesting streams and stuff as well. And, that's where we're trying to get to. As well as with these types of game modes, is to bring in new audiences, to have engaging conversations, to have gameplay that's engaging and interesting, and that people want to watch and listen to, because they're going to learn and benefit from that, right? So I think these are all good things, in the grand scheme of things for land. We'll see if it can be realized or not, but at least on paper it seems interesting.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. And I'm glad that they talked about the idea of land surfing, so it was opened up to, to anyone that wants to try to, put their hand at some working land and getting the resources from it. So that I think that opened it up to the community a bit more than what it was originally.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, it looks like if you watch my recent video talking about what percentage of land might get worked on day one, it looks like we'll probably have a lot of unused land, perhaps, in
Mhm.
Splinterlands to start. Now, what land surfing does is, provide opportunity for, you know, all land to be worked by anyone with cards, basically in DEC, which is good because that means everyone can participate in the land game should they wish to. But it's interesting when you think about it. If we're thinking that, let's say, there might be 110 or 120,000 plots maybe that are unused on day one, that could be seen as an issue for land, initially. But if land is successful, we have to remember that land is limited. There's only 150,000 plots. Now I know we say only 150,000 plots today, and you probably laugh because there's not that many players and it's not all going to be used. But in the future, if the game does well and it does what it's supposed to do, 150,000 plots of land in the grand scheme of things is not a lot. So there could be some very competitive land surfing in the future if this thing takes off and really does well. And I think that's what the team wants to get to. If we get there, I mean, as a landowner, you gotta like the prospects at that point in time.
Oh yeah, for sure. And talking about those plots that will go unworked. One of the arguments against the trying to farm SPS in the beginning from I think Steve was mentioning this, he was saying, well, you don't really have a shot because someone can put 100,000 PP and be multiplying it times 5 and whatever else. Those big landowners that have those kinds of cards that were going to do that, they still, I don't think, will be getting the SPS that they were for holding, 2 regions
Right,
out
because
of that
people
one
don't
plot.
understand that. Like, if you hold a region today, you're getting literally like 1,400 or 1,700 SPS per day per region, which is a ton of money.
Yeah.
I don't know if people have done the math. Like, if you're gank and you hold a region today, what is it, 1.4 or 1.7? Do you know what it is right now?
I don't know, I've already claimed today.
I
I
mean,
can't
let's
look.
let's just call it 1.5 just to be
Yeah.
conservative, right? So that's 1,500 SPS per day. And let's just say SPS is 0.017. It's probably more than that, but let's just say a penny, 1.7 pennies. That means you're making every day $25.50 just getting out of bed with land, with SPS at an all-time low, right? And then you times that over the month, it's $765 a month. I mean, maybe it can pay your rent depending on where you live. Just by owning a region in land. So that's pretty significant. Now, to your point, is when land comes online, what's the cost to get that same payout in SPS moving forward? And I think that's the big question because people are just saying, oh, if you have some alpha gold foil legendaries or some max legendary betas, just throw them on land and you're going to be doing like, 300, 400,000 production points. Yeah, I mean, that's probably true. If you also own a Rooney, you own a legendary land, you own a legendary totem, and it's occupied, right? So you put all these ifs, and all of a sudden the cost of that single piece of land that's generating 300,000 production points is literally ridiculous. So you're like, well, yeah, if you're putting that kind of assets into land, you better hope you get something like that out of it. Otherwise, you're wasting your time, right?
Yeah, I'll be excited to watch the Tails PP per APR graph and how things level off at a certain point and how much it costs to get a certain amount out of land once that's out.
Well, it's
But
funny because I do basic math on my YouTube videos and my contents. I mean, I'm not good at math. I mean, I did well in math. I took all the AP Calcs or whatever in high school and
Mhm.
college or what. So I did the advanced math. But if you ask to tell me to do like a derivative or anything fancy with math these days, I mean, I forgot all that many moons ago. So I might have to go back to school just to keep producing content for Splinterlands.
Yeah, I'll be asking ChatGPT
Exactly
to
right.
figure it out for me. But yeah, I mean, I was kind of mentioning this last night. Is um, the production boost, for instance. The cost that they are right now. Is it worth it to get a common totem that's $25, or is it worth it to get a gold foil common reward card that's going to be 2,000 PP?
Hmm.
The you need over a certain level of base production power on your plot to actually get the same value from a common totem that you would from a gold foil common reward. So there's interesting balances there in cost, and
Yes.
when the titles are even more than that, they're hard to justify the cost of having to buy extra titles unless you have a massive amount of base PP on your plot.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons I sold a title recently, and it really comes down to efficiency, and the level of efficiency that is important is going to depend on the player and the budget, and that's why I talk a lot about having a land budget and having a land plan because again, you can build tall, like you can have you could be a tract owner and say I'm only going to work five plots of my track. It's going to be my keep and my legendaries and my occupied or whatever. And I'm going to put 100% of my budget on those five plots. And that might be an optimal strategy, perhaps. Time will tell. But to your point, if you put a totem and a Rooney and a title or whatever on those lands, it makes absolute sense. But if you're that same tract owner and you don't build up five plots to have max PP, but you say, hey, I'm going to go the economy route. I'm going to go the budget rental car route, and I'm going to go and I'm going to try and put 80 plots of land, most of it being common land. And I'm going to put, 5,000 PP on it, basically common regular foil stuff, spread it out. And then I have a bunch of DEC costs instead of card costs. The question is which strategy is better? Well, I've started to do the math there, probably not surprising. And it's interesting equation because, there's not really a right answer, but um, I will say that the cost to do that tall build with high production points is does not scale as fast as a budget build, if that makes sense. The production points ratio per cost ratio is not a one-to-one or it's not a linear mapping, if that makes sense. And I was going to do a video on it. I'll probably do it at some point in time, but the exercise is interesting when you look at like building tall versus building wide and the costs and the returns potentially. Definitely interesting data for sure.
Yeah, and then I mean, I think you had mentioned Gathering the Magic's video
Mhm.
in when you're talking to Dwayne. That one was taking it to a different level too, because then he was maximizing the DEC that was staked on the cards.
Right.
So at that level too, I mean, there's a whole nother game of maximizing the DEC that's staked with the BCX of cards that you're using, and that was a really cool thought experiment too of how he was doing that.
Yeah, definitely a really good video. I enjoyed it. It's a different perspective that I was had not looked at, and after watching that video, I was like, oh, that's interesting. Yeah, let's see what that means. And I did my own numbers and compared it to Gathering the Magic's data, and it was yeah. And that's why I think having these types of discussions on land is really important in the community because we're not all individually geniuses, right? As a community, we can pool together ideas and come up with some really exciting stuff. Whereas as individuals, we can come up with good stuff, but it may not be great stuff, right? So that's why I think talking about having these conversations with land, there's a lot of meat on the bone here when it comes to land. And I'm just surprised that, and I know land's not even out, and I know there's not a lot of landowners necessarily. But that being said, there's a lot of interesting conversations to be had when it comes to land, even in its current state.
Yeah, and there's, you know, you got to think of the people that haven't been, you know, listening to the conversations that have been going on, that don't, you know, that made, like, I think I was talking to Gank and Keys on their screen, on their stream, and I was kind of saying that, you know, if you're going to work 10,000 pp for each of your plots, you're going to need at least 2 grain plots to your one non-grain working plot, because your grain worker is going to eat half of the grain that they're producing.
Plus the taxes.
Yeah, plus taxes too. So you'll need actually a little bit more than, you'll need more than 2 equal grain working plots to your other plot.
Correct. And here's the other crazy thing along those same lines. So I listened to that stream with Gank, and I talked to Dwayne as well. These are veterans of the game that have been here for years, right? Before probably you and I were here. And, I think coming out of both their admissions, they would tell you, if you ask them honestly, they would probably say that they're not ready for land if land dropped next week. And these are content creators. These are folks that have big assets in Splinterlands. These are folks that talk about Splinterlands on a either weekly or daily basis, and they're not ready. So, what does that tell you about everyone else, perhaps?
Yeah. Or what's going to happen with the big landholders that, you know, is Aggie ready for for his land? You know, he's got the inside scoop, but is he really ready with, you know, land that he's going to work?
I don't know. Has anyone scraped the blockchain to see what Aggie's accounts are doing? That could
Yeah, I
tell
don't know
you.
if Kira's on here, he could let us know if Valhalla God's getting drained yet or not.
Yeah, I
But
mean, it's interesting. Some of these, I mean, I can't even imagine the planning that folks like Vugtis and Aggie and Cryptomancer and Brybro and others that own multiple regions have to be going through. I mean, maybe you just say, if you have so many plots and you just have so many good plots, you just say, hey, I'm only worried about, the only thing I care about are legendaries and occupies maybe to start, or whatever the case may be, or magical legendaries, what have you, because they just have probably so much stuff and maybe not even really enough assets that they're just like, but even then, like these card collections that have millions upon millions of collection power. Like, I did the exercise, and I'm sure you probably did the exercise as well, about mapping your card collection to land and understanding what you're going to keep to play with and what you're going to keep to move over to land.
mhm.
And that exercise was mind numbing because it was literally, I don't have a large collection, but I have, a decent amount of cards, but it was thousands of lines in Excel to go through. I can't even imagine what these folks that have these huge collections are. I mean, the management of that and the planning for that, that's rough.
Yeah, and just all the unique different, you know, cards that are in there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for me, being mainly from Chaos Legion cards or reward cards I'd be taking from, it was a lot smaller of a unique list of cards. But for those people that have the one off of, oh, I'm going to take this, you know, gold foil alpha card that I have, or this other beta card that I have, I mean, those sheets, or that planning has to be pretty crazy.
Well, I don't know about you, but when I was going through my cards, after I got to a certain production point level, I just said not worth my time. Because even it could have been a gold foil rare, could have been a level 6 common or whatever. At a certain point, you're just like, is it even worth the time to put this on land and stake the DEC? Because literally, if you look at the calculations, like if you put, let's say you put 5 cards that are like 100 pp each, which if you look at the chart here, we can pull it up. Like 100 pp would be like what, like a 40 BCX common, which is what? That's like a level. What is a 40 BCX common? I don't even know. Let's take a 60 BCX common, 100 like 40 PP. 60 BCX common is probably not unusual. That's like probably a silver level common, right? I mean, it would take literally months to clear a common plot of land with those type of cars on land, and you have to pay the grain cost as well as wait the months to do it. So at some point it becomes like, yeah, you could put cards on land, but is it even worth it?
Yeah. Yeah,
So
that's, I mean, I guess getting something done out of the cards that you have sitting around like that, if you can put them on there to be doing something to it, then it's worth it. But I mean, you also have to stake the DEC too, so
yeah,
you'd have to have that DEC available to put on there to let those guys work for 2 months on the land and have the grain to feed them. So you'd already have to have the lands producing grain to feed the guys that are doing the clearing. So yeah, it's a lot to think of, but I think, I don't know if it was you or someone else who was talking. I think it might have been Steve that was saying it. He's going to have like a roaming clearing crew, and so he's already got a group of cards that he's going to be having as like land clearing workers. They're bigger PP cards. He's going to basically stick on a plot, let him clear the plot, take him off, move into the next plot, and then put in the cards that he actually planned to work the plot.
yeah. I tried to sell Steve on that idea. I don't think he bought it, but yeah, I mean
Oh, really?
that's a concept that I've talked about
Yeah.
and others have talked about having a, like you said, that kind of, because right now you can get neutral cards at a discount.
Yeah.
Because no one wants them because they don't give you an element bonus. But here's the thing, the benefit of not having an element bonus is you don't have an element penalty. When you have
Mhm.
to clear diverse plots of land, you don't want to have different land clearing crews or multiple crews to clear different types of land because that defeats the purpose of something like that. You want something that just works and does this job and you move on to the next thing. Neutrals do that. So what people don't realize is everyone just thinks, oh, these elements give me a bonus. Well, yeah, they give you a bonus, but if you look here under terrain preferences, for example, if you have a land crew that consists of, let's say, fire cards and like death cards, as an example, right? And if you're clearing a caldera, fantastic, you're getting a 10% bonus. Use that same crew and try and clear a bog. Any fire card that you just deployed has a minus 50% penalty to their production points, making them basically useless. So people don't realize that these neutral cards, these high production point neutral cards, actually could have great value on day one, especially if you own lots of land, and you don't want to use time crystals, right, to clear the land. So that's definitely something to consider. Now it's not without a cost, um, because you still have to pay the grain to feed those workers to clear the land. Either way, whether you use time crystals or those cards, and you still have to spend the time. It's not going to be instantaneous, but it's kind of that, again, goes back to the land budget question, because not everyone has the budget to have time crystals for 100% of their land, but they might have some neutrals that could fit this bill and get them up and running over time, on a much reduced cost.
Yeah, for those and that's kind of, stuff for the big landholders too, that I think you were saying your analysis video that you did that was really interesting, of I think it was 370 something that had the larger land holdings. There was some
60
percentage of people that had
67 unique wallets or accounts hold 55.8% of all land in Victoria.
yeah, yeah, that was a pretty cool statistic here. And then the number that was between, it was like under 30 or something like that, was pretty big. And you were kind of estimating that most of the under 30 or under 20 was going to be 100% worked.
Correct. Yeah, I think I
So I mean,
have
I
the
think,
spreadsheet. I can pull it up if you're curious.
yeah, that'd be good. But I mean, the under 20, they're not really going to need those. They most likely won't be using like those roaming clearing crews as much, but definitely for those larger landholders, that's definitely something I would think that they'd want to be doing.
Yep, for sure. And actually, I would have to reload that. I just cleared that document to create another video, actually.
Oh,
So I think I can still pull it up though. No rest for the wicked, as they say, right? Let's see. Oh, maybe it didn't save it. Whoops.
that's right.
Anyways, but yeah, yeah, you can check out that video. It has the data there, and yeah, it's definitely interesting. Anyone can extract that data using the Splinter cards rich list. So
Yes, I mean for me, so I have my 15 plot, and I'll be, for the most part, having them all being worked by mostly correct terrain preference cards right from the get go. But for those larger landholders, it's definitely something they'll be needing to do or needing to make plans on doing something like that.
mm-hmm. Oh, I found it. What do you know? I'm gonna bring it back here. Yeah, so here's that data basically. I can maybe make it a little bit larger. There you go. So yeah, the number of plots owned was less than 20 plots. Was 10,827 total plots owned by wallets or accounts that had 20 or less plots. And then you had actually, for comparison purposes, for people that owned anywhere between over one tract, but less than, let's say, anywhere between 4 to 1 tracts of land, the number of plots there is only 16,831. So that number was surprising to me. It means there's not a lot of people that own multiple tracts necessarily, but there's a lot of people that own, less than 20 plots. And then there's just this huge number of people that own, a ton of land.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see too some of those players that have over the 401 plots. I wonder what their collection power is right now. If there's any that have a very low collection power and they're just investors, there could be some large sections of land that are unworked. But I guess you wouldn't really know because they may have just all their cards in rental accounts too.
Sure. Yeah, there's no real way to know that without, sitting there and scrubbing blockchain all day long.
Yep.
But I can tell you, I do know of some folks that might have gotten in on the region lottery and don't have necessarily 10 million collection power in cards. So there's definitely those cases where there's going to be regions that you know aren't initially very populated. So
yeah, there's a tract in Area 51 that we were watching or I think there's 2 tracks actually, and we were after Sound and I were kind of keeping an eye on it because we're just interested in seeing what's going on there. But the 2 tracks hadn't been cleared for a long time, even when or it hadn't been surveyed, even when you had to have the surveyed land to get the SPS from it. And so then he did survey, but the name was like Conpike, and it's a name that I hadn't heard of or really seen in Discord or in anything like that. So I think there's either some OG players that have land that are just really not as involved in the game anymore, or maybe just some more silent players that don't really involve themselves with Discord, but just kind of get in the game.
It's the quiet ones you got to watch out for, virus.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, no, I mean it's true. I mean, some of them could be OGs, and some of them just may not watch YouTube, may not be on Discord, may not be on Twitch. Just kind of do their own thing and just don't tune into some of the splinter noise, so to speak. Um, which is why it's always hard to really get an idea necessarily on the number of players in the game. But again, this spreadsheet, as I talked with Dwayne about, there's 3,737 um, what is it? Unique accounts that own land, that have at least claimed land in Splinterlands. So yeah, I mean that gives you at least a subset of probably the human user base that's active
Yeah.
to work from. So there's your bare minimum number. Now maybe not all of them play on a daily basis, but at least they've claimed land in the last 8 months or so. So they've had to been here.
That's true. So when it does go to Mavs, is there anything in particular that you are interested to see how it works?
I don't know. I mean, if it goes on Mavs, it's not going to have my data. It's not going to have my cards. It's just going to be a all gold foil deck of everything and 10 million, packs I could open or whatever. So I don't really know how I'm going to use the Mavs server other than just to test the functionality, I guess, of land. I think a better use case of the server would honestly be if they took a point in time snapshot of the real world environment, um, so that Mavs could actually test with their actual cars and their actual land. Honestly, that would be a better test, I think, and it would also be more beneficial for the players because then you could actually test your strategy and see what generates in grain, does it map up to what you were estimating, or did you have like an error in your spreadsheet or something that you didn't catch, and now you're totally screwed if you didn't see it until day one of land being live, as an example. So I think that would be a better use of land. Again, the Mav server, we get what we're going to get. If they give us the current Mav server with everyone having everything, I mean, it's not going to be a real great exercise other than, this would be if I was the biggest whale in the game, this is what I would do. And it's kind of like, having like dropping into a Fortnite match and you're invincible and you have like, nuclear weapons that you just blow up huge chunks of the map with. It just isn't just not even fun at that point because it's kind of pointless, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I don't even know if starter packages will be for claiming. If they did just refresh it and everything was, new, and then you got attract and you can claim, but if there's no starter packages, then you can't really see how that is going to end up working.
Right.
Which Farbatrad just said that they'd made a change to how the building in a box worked because now the power cores are not tied to the plot itself. The power cores are on the account. So you could possibly, let's say that you had a building in a box in one plot, you didn't have a building in a box in the other. You could take the power core from the one and put it on the other plot now.
Oh, that's good. That's good for people that couldn't 100% buy like building in a box or whatever, right? So then now they can
It's
move it to the stuff that they're actually going to use versus the stuff that they randomly got. That's all linked to it, right?
Yeah, but it does bring up a question when you're buying a plot that has a building in a box because so once 1.5 goes live,
You don't
if
have
you
the
buy a
power core,
plot that has a building in a box, it doesn't include the power core, I
right?
would assume, because
Yeah,
now it's on your account and it's not on the plot.
yeah. Same thing with the time vault. So right, if you buy, I guess Peak Monsters doesn't document it, but if you did buy a plot that had time vaults, you'd never get that benefit because you wouldn't have gotten the time crystals or the grain. So it might have been purchased with a time vault, but Peak Monsters doesn't designate it as such because it's not relevant to the purchaser of the land.
Yeah. I mean, they'd still get the building for 2.0
Sure.
of whatever that might do, but you wouldn't get the power core part of it.
Hmm. Right. Yeah, some interesting discussions for sure. First of many, I'm sure. Maybe not the
Yeah.
first, but just the additional conversation for many more to come, I'm sure. So let's check here on chat. I want to give some cards away as well. If you do have any questions for Virus or myself, make sure you put those in chat, and you can also get active here as well, and we'll try and sort through the emojis uh, and the spam here with real questions. Just enter something once if you don't have a question, just so we can kind of decipher stuff in the chat. But other than land virus, what's on your mind? I know we had a battle earlier today.
Yeah.
I I got lucky because you used Astral Entity when Kitty was available, when Dragon was available, and I happened to use Kitty, so you didn't get take advantage of your dodge.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's one of the things with playing in Champ right now, at least with what I do. So I play with my own cards. I don't rent, and I don't really have a lot of the I don't really have any of the untamed legendary summoners. So I kind of just make do with what I got. But
Hmm.
I can see whenever that dragon's, I know there's a chance of what's going to come up,
Right.
and just try to avoid it. But there's not a lot of. I mean, I think that was the right strategy if you didn't have a kitty,
Hmm.
but since you did, yeah, that's a rough one.
Yeah, I mean, before I had Kitty, I would always, well, because you played Nightmare, right, with the
Mhm.
speed play, and I got burned many times playing Death and Nightmare because I like that play as well. I just learned to never play it when I saw Dragon available at the higher levels of the game because I figured there was a 50-50 coin flip that I would face an exact counter to the team and just make it so it's an auto loss. I kind of do the same thing because I don't have Yoden. I know we talked about this yesterday on stream. I don't have Yoden, and when I see fire, I just assume everyone that I'm playing has Yoden, and I just automatically go into a defensive strategy against Yoden almost by default, or at least some type of mitigation, because I figure I'm going to see it more often than not. Maybe it's just my bad luck, but that just seems to be how I approach it, for better or for worse.
Yeah, I usually scan through like the last 5 matches, and if it's not all Chaos Legion summoners, then like if there's some untamed summoners for the most part, then I'll pretty much assume that they have at least access to a Jotun or a Llama or a Kitty.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But
I will tell you, one of the things that has been wrecking me recently is is llama, and it's not that I see it often, but it's when I see it I usually end up losing to it. And I don't know, are people sleeping on llama, do you think? Because with some of the cards now, um and some of the martyr abilities like Pelacor Mercenary, if it's like double martyred llama last stand with that cleanse and that heal and that huge health pool, I mean, that's a beast. That's a
oh
beast
yeah,
to deal with. And I just don't plan for it. Like, I don't use Vampiric Blossom. I don't use Gargoyle. I don't use some of these cards regularly because I don't see Llama use that much. But when it's used against me, ah man, it's usually not good. I don't know if you're seeing something similar or not.
I do. It seems to always happen when it's pretty much perfect for it. So like when it's the low mana uh, poison match, and that llama can shine with that 7 cost Pelacor.
Mhm. But I've been
So
seeing it used in even like mid, like all the way up to like 30 mana. Teams with
oh
almost
really?
30 mana. Yeah, they just fit it in there. um, and it's gotten me a couple times because, like I said, I wasn't expecting it, and it's
Yeah.
happened in the last week multiple times where like it was just it was a blowout. It was a complete disaster for me because I didn't see it coming, and it just so I'm just wondering if it's a meta shift maybe that we might see, because yeah, I had no answer to it.
I think it's more of the meta probably in bronze than it is in champion.
Mm,
But I can say I've seen it a few times, but not very often. But I hear from the people that are playing bronze right now that it's pretty big down there.
yeah, I would imagine. Now, let's pick some winners here. Got JP Larone. Radiated Brutes. What do you think of the Radiated Brute at 5 mana? Do you use it at all?
I think I use it probably quite a bit. It's especially with the enrage too.
Mhm.
Even with like Yasik, if you can get the enrage and then it gets the speed with that. I mean the 8 cost with the reflection shield, the new reward card is really nice too. But
Ash
it's
Mirage? Or not
yeah.
the reward. You mean
No.
the Rift Watcher? Not you meant the reward card. Which reward card
What's
is
it
that?
called? It is where now? Phyrexian Hero.
Oh, right. The legendary?
Yep, the legendary.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a card I have maxed out. It's a nice card.
It's
But
kind of deceptive because it has weapons training, right?
yeah, so you can make Heatsmith have have some attack if you want him to.
Right. But the
But
card is good enough where you really don't even need it to have weapons training, right?
no, yeah, just with the reflection shield, that's the big thing. Because if it's a fire available match and you might expect Jotun to be there,
Mhm.
it's perfect to have a reach card that has magic reflect or the reflection shield.
Yeah, and that's why when we talked yesterday, that's where my Rooney is playing a role because it doesn't have reach, but it has opportunity, so it can still attack from the second position and get that reflection shield off in a pinch. But it's not ideal once the front tank goes down because Rooney is not really a tank per se, whereas the Phyrexian hero is much better suited for that in this off tank role
But yeah, if that radiated brute gets enraged and
with the Osix speed.
with the Osix speed, it could be a pretty brutal card.
Yeah, yeah, I do agree. This is the other thing, and this is why I was so excited about Scargor when she came out, and it's just not really translated well to the meta at this point. But when you look at Scargor, like anytime you see the Spreading Fury rule set, right, which is the Enrage rule set, pop up,
Mhm.
I mean, it's a great rule set because you can really take advantage of certain cards. Their speed goes up, their damage goes up quite a bit. And I always thought, well, if I could know that I'm going to have the enrage rule set, and I know my opponent's not going to have it, that seems like such an advantage, right? In theory. But what I found in practice is, at least for the teams I put together with Scargor, when I try and use the strategy, for the most part, um, the fire team doesn't have like a lot of fast, big health monsters, right? Because ideally, what you want is something like Phineas Rage. You want something with a double digit health pool with a high melee attacking and high speed. And you want a lot of those, right? And you want them to have like Tenny Striker's good as an example for that kind of rule set as well. It doesn't have a ton of health, but once it gets enraged, similar to like a Pelacor Bandit, it's hard to hit. Um, but maybe Scargor is just missing maybe one or two cards meta cards before she really becomes a powerhouse. I just think her ability is just really underrated right now.
How's your Idiri Fire going? The epic reward card.
Not great, honestly. Maybe that's the reason that I'm not using Scargor that much. Let's take a look. I don't think it's great. I'm pretty sure I'm like at level 2 for that card. Let's see.
I think mine's at level 4.
Yeah, mine's at, oh, I guess I have it level 4, regular foil.
At level 6, it gets the phase.
Yeah, it gets phase, return fire, and it's got 4 speed. So it go to 6 speed with phase, with a decent health pool, and return fire with taunts. So you gotta hit it. Yeah, I mean, it's not a huge mana cost either. 6 mana for that card with Scargor. Once you get phase, is pretty reasonable. You could probably tank pretty well. There's not a great heal option in fire, but you could use it in like an off tank or a rear position and put triage out there. So you can maybe use a spirit hoarder to heal it, perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I need to get to level 6 and try that out.
And then you can use the weapons training from the other one too. And it'd be below the force field
Right.
damage. I think even if it was enraged, so it'd probably get what 2 attack from the Phyrexian hero, so get enraged to 4. I think. So it wouldn't have the Magnor problem.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah, it's not going to get force field nullified. Yeah, I mean that could be an interesting team. Scargor, Idri Fire, Phyrexian hero, and then build from there. You've got the reflection shield, anti Jotun built in. You got some magic protection, and you've got an attack, 2 attack at before Fury at 6 mana. Seems like a good value at that point.
Yeah.
Interesting. And also, I noticed what was interesting when I saw the Xbot data, just as an aside. I noticed that Tortesian Chief was not rated very highly at all on the Xbot playlist, basically. But yet, for Fire, and to a certain degree, Death, in the modern format, that's really one of your only options, right, for a heal for those splinters.
Yeah, I'm curious if it takes something with like the amount that it's used into account. If somehow that changes the rating. So if it's only used in 1 out of 50 or 100 matches, if it then gets rated lower than
Yeah,
other cards,
that's
even
definitely
if
the
it is.
case. Yeah, because it uses an ELO average. So if you're using it less, it's going to impact your average ELO, I think. Calculation.
So while it may be the better card, or might be more useful if you had it, if it's just not used as often because not as many people have the card, or just generally use the card, then it's not counted as high as other ones.
Yeah, it's how you use it, right? Maybe that's the takeaway here, because yeah, I mean, if Xbot doesn't use it, and a majority of people are using Xbot still in Wild, or maybe Battle Helper in Modern, that could be why some of these really good cards aren't getting rated highly in that data.
And then I don't know if you use Splinter Tools. Do you have the plugin that tells you the percent chance to win kind of thing?
I was actually thinking about using it again because I've just had some matches that have been so frustrating. Like I had a match just before the stream where I had Dr. Blight against a Earth team with a triple heal because it had a kitty. It was kitty Earth, so it had mycelic infantry up front with kitty heal, psychic heal, and a princess heal. And I had Dr. Blight, and all I needed to get through was the infantry, and then his whole team folds. but I could. He has no cleanse, right? Earth has no cleanse. And he didn't have a dragon cleanse. And Dr. Blight, the first 4 turns, could not stick an affliction. And I lost the match because of that. And I was like, man, if I had splinter tools, I'm pretty sure that was like a 99% win there.
Yeah.
And yeah, anyways. But no, I haven't been using it for like literally years. So I don't know.
But what I was going to mention was that it seems like it gets further and further off because I don't think it's being updated, and so I don't think it's taking the martyrs into account as well anymore. And so it seems like matches where I put martyr cards in there, or even some of the bloodlust cards in there, that it doesn't get the percentages right. Because I'm like, I've got the win. I know I've got the win. They'll put me at like a 20% chance to win.
Oh, really?
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible it's not being maintained, right, with the new cards and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. SC Father pulling a win here. Hardy Stonefish. I know I make fun of this card a ton, but because of the art, it's the only 1 mana card besides Chaos Agent that I have maxed in my Chaos Legion deck because it actually is decent.
Yeah. It's funny because one of my other things with land too is I know it's probably not the most cost effective for peak per dollar kind of thing, but I've been trying to get at least max out the lowest cost gold foil common cards.
Yep.
So I maxed out the few gold foiled hardy stonefish I had. I decided to max the gold out so I could use it on land. And so I've been purchasing all those 1 cost or 1 mana BC or 1 mana commons that are gold foil lately.
Yeah, I think, and we talked about it yesterday on stream as well. I think there's value in the Chaos Legion gold foils for commons, especially not just for land though, but also just for playing value. I think they're still at a price, even though they're higher than they were. I still think they're at a price point that isn't unreasonable, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting. Back to back Hardy Stonefish is there. Popular card, it seems. So do you wanna do a challenge here on Stream Buyers? Do you wanna throw down and get your revenge?
Sure.
Go ahead and send it my way, and we'll throw down here. I'll try not to use Kitty. Let's see, 13 mana,
Great.
going the distance with knockout. Interesting. This is because the mana makes it a little bit tough here.
Yeah, definitely.
It's not an easy choice. Thing. Hmm. Actually, gonna do that. All right, we'll try this. Is the audio coming through, Skyer? let me know.
Stuck between two choices here.
Yeah, the mana level is really what decided it for me. All right, so I did go with water. I was thinking going with water because they have the better offensive archers. But I went with close range instead.
So my debate was between just going death with Queen of Crows.
Yeah, and just put Queen of Crows out there and match it or return fire me to death.
Yep.
Yeah, it might have been a better strategy. Queen of Crows is just so good. But this is working well for you. My blind is not helping me here, and that stun is hitting every single turn.
See, all I need is stun 100% of the time, and I'm good.
You did. Yeah. All you have to do is, with a 50% proc rate, just hit 100% and you're golden.
Exactly.
So, yeah. Yeah,
See, I figured you might have gone the Queen of Crows route too, so I was hoping the
triage.
The triage would help kind of
Yeah.
alleviate that a bit.
Yeah, that's a good play. That's a solid team. I'm surprised you put Igor in the second spot instead of Mir Dampier, though.
Yeah, I was debating between that one too. I think it was if it was going to come down to a tie game where it's just we had the two guys left, neither of them could attack.
You wanted the
Then
higher health.
exactly.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, if I didn't have a close range card, yeah, that's true. Fatigue would have made a difference. Okay, I gotcha. All right, you want to send in one more? So we're 1-1 now.
Yeah.
This is the tiebreaker. This one's for all the marbles. This one's for slips.
There we go. We got some mana this time.
7 mana, equalizer, odd ones out. Interesting. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna go there. I'm gonna go there. It's odd ones out there, right? So I'm gonna do that. I'll do that. And I also want that. Oh, interesting. Probably there. And I don't have enough mana, right? I'm gonna try something like this. Oh, that's scary. So if I swap this in,
I don't like my team.
I don't like my team either. If that makes you feel any better, I'm gonna probably do that. Yeah, we'll try this. I don't know. I could tell you that I wanted to use the Vigilator, but it put my team at risk, basically, if I did that. So, all right. So we had similar thoughts. You went with Agor and Vigilator. I was going to do Coral and Vigilator. So we had similar thoughts. I don't know. Let's see. Let's see how this plays out. Because you don't have Kitty, so it's a chance my Coral Lurker couldn't live long enough. But I got to get through Agor twice.
Yeah, with the shield on there too, or the armor.
Yeah. I do have some magic though, and that coral lurker didn't last
And,
very long.
and dry bone's gonna be.
In trouble.
Ooh. Oh, the misses.
Yeah, look at that speed, 9 speed and 8 speed there. That's what I was hoping the coral lurker could do, but it just, I mean, just didn't last very long. But it's looking better now. Because I mean, True Strike on Jared Scar is going to do damage, but I've got the triage and I've got enough health back there to maybe last one more turn. And then Jared Scar's on my side starting to get going now. And you don't have a force field, so I think we're gonna win this. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I like that dry bone down there in the front with the kitty heel.
Yeah. Yeah. I the card does not look great on paper. It kind of looks like a Charlock Minotaur, but with the retaliate and the enrage, um, it does surprisingly well for me.
Yeah.
As long as I'm not up against like Oceanus, something like that,
Yeah.
it does really well. So, yeah, that was
Good
a
game,
fun
sir.
match. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He can't get this on the battle helper brawls or battle helper tournaments. So, and
Yeah.
this is what it's about, right? It's about you know having tough decisions and making imperfect you know teams because as a human you're not going to always have the optimal strategy. There's a time limit, and there's like in that particular scenario, the odd ones out. Um, if you chose the wrong splinter, right, you're going to be pressed for time and have suboptimal choices for units, basically. So you kind of have to know your deck pretty well to know which splinters work with like an odd ones out versus an even Stevens, for example, based on the mana and splinters available and stuff. So at some point, knowledge of your deck and your cards is a differentiator on a human versus human type of matchup, right? Um, but with battle helpers and bots, yeah, not so much.
Yeah. And that's, like the ghost card tournaments. Like, while, they talk about like, oh, they're everyone gets all the cards. There's some of us that are just more, we know our deck, we know how to play with our cards that we have.
Mhm.
And then, yeah, you can give us access to all the cards, but if I don't know the ins and outs of how, certain cards play and what cards play well with them, then it can be more difficult to play those. And it's kind of funny because at Splinterfest, I played a game. I had a match. I was matched up with Half Blue, and he had a lot more knowledge of wild cards than I did. And but the problem was he knew the meta of what a person would play in that type of rule set for that type of mana. He was very knowledgeable with all that. For me, I was coming in like a wrecking ball. Like, I don't even know what I'm doing. Some of the cards that I think are good for this rule set in there, and probably something that he wasn't used to at all. And I end up winning against him. But he gave me this look of like, why did you play that?
That was such a suboptimal team. What
He
were you
was like, it was such
thinking?
a, and he just gave me this look of, why did you play? I was like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes having the unexpected team is the winning team, right?
Yeah.
Because it's no one sees it coming. So
Yeah.
yeah, fun stuff. Well, other topics you want to cover here, Virus, on stream today? Anything else in the Splinterverse? Do we have a town hall tomorrow? Is it actual real town hall?
It should be. I think it is. I think they gave a announcement for a reminder for it.
Okay.
I do wonder what I wonder what'll be the next big announcement for the new thing coming after Land. If it's going to be,
It's gonna be
the
the promo
promo
card
set.
set, right?
Yeah, I mean that's what I would think it would be.
Yeah, I
Whether
think it's gonna
it's,
be promo set.
I know that I think Cryptomancer got pulled for Land, but was he working on guild stuff before? Like, is it the new guild stuff that's coming directly after Land, or is it the promo set?
I don't know because remember he was supposed to be doing the guild buildings with staking of Chaos Legion packs and stuff like that, right? Vouchers,
Yeah,
maybe.
and they do want to, and they did say they want to change up the phrase pretty much right after Land comes out because they think that the alpha beta cards could get staked on Land, which would leave those alpha beta phrases being a lot more difficult to fill.
Yeah, I mean, I know there. I don't know if you saw, but there was a huge uproar Friday late night, early Saturday morning in Mav chat with some whales, some very respected whales in the community, having spicy words, and it was around those tournaments, right? And there's a lot of kind of bad blood, I think, being spilt there for no reason because the issue was the tournaments weren't scheduled timely because everything else has been busy or what have you in terms of service or changing whatnot. But to your point, I think those tournaments days are numbered. Like we're talking like put it on a calendar and start crossing off the days because the availability of those are probably going to be not a thing in the future once Land is officially released. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the death knell for those tournaments, which have been seen as a problem, I think, for many in the community for years, but nothing's been done about it. So I think that gravy train of free handouts and subsidies is going to come to an end pretty quickly here.
Yeah, and it gives the team an argument to say, like, so if the people came back and said, well, you're devaluing our older cards, what can we do with them now that you
Land.
have removed the tournaments? And yeah, the answer is Land now.
Yeah.
So now they actually have an answer to it. It would make sense now that they can start cutting off some of the alpha beta specific stuff.
Yeah, and I may have a controversial view on that, but I say thank God.
Yeah.
Long overdue, but
Yep.
that's just me. But and again, I haven't invested in alpha gold foils, so I'm outside looking in, and so of course that's probably a, a reasonable perspective from that situation. But if you're on the other side of the coin and you spend thousands of dollars on alpha gold foils, perhaps, then you're probably have a different viewpoint. So
Yeah. And I mean that's, like if you held on to your kitty for forever, that's eventually Untamed is going to be at that point. And then if they tell you like, oh yeah, you can't really, use for whatever reason, if they phased out Untamed, if we blew up and there was a ton of players and Untamed was relegated to being cast out at some point, then you're not going to want to put a kitty on Land. So I don't know. I mean, not that they would have an Untamed specific fray or tournament, but it would just be kind of part of Wild, I would assume. But I mean, that's what it should be. I think it should be modern and Wild type things,
mhm.
not specific to just alpha beta.
Yeah, maybe one quick topic to close us out for the stream here is it's kind of been something that's been on my mind for a while because you probably know that I finally got a max level kitty by basically trading Hawks my gold level kitty 6 BCX kitty and giving him basically the difference in SPS or DC or whatever and making up
Yeah.
the difference. That's how I was able to get a max level kitty. And at the time, I got a reasonable price on Kitty, but it's come down, significantly. I would say it's probably come down, I don't know, at least 20% since that point in time.
Mhm.
Maybe. I don't know exactly, but it's definitely lower than what I paid for it. And Kitty's obviously still in the meta, still very strong, still very useful. But just like all things, like my SPS continues to go up, my SPS stake, but the value continues to go down. And it's disheartening, right? Where you see these, what are essentially high value assets, in my opinion, SPS, Kitty, other things like that. You're getting more of them, or they're not losing their meta qualities, but yet their value gets less and less. And hopefully we can reverse that with land and some of these other things coming up in the future. But it's a little demoralizing, seeing every day, your value eroding in the ecosystem. So
Yeah, and I mean, you gotta. I guess we kind of keep on waiting for the probably not just the flywheel. I don't know if the flywheel is enough to overcome the inflation of the SBS. It'll probably slow it down or maybe stop the loss on it if the flywheel is actually going. But eventually then you're just hoping for the game to, or like a bull run to come with crypto, or things to start growing again, for things to start going up. But yeah, it definitely hurts to see the value of everything kind of dwindling there. We can just kind of hope that land in the next few steps kind of help bring things back around.
absolutely. Yeah, it's just depressing every day. I feel like I'm making progress. I think I'm building my SPS stake, in a meaningful way, every season. I see the numbers go up on the quantity of SPS. You keep seeing the value on that screen continue to go down. And you're like, well, what am I doing wrong here? So, yeah, but we press on, and we keep stacking those stats, because again, SPS is at an all-time low. We're still in a bear market, so hopefully that's not the case forever, right?
Yeah.
That being said, let's give away some more cards and close out the stream here. Credits for the win. So Virus, when are we going to see the Tales from the Virus channel on YouTube or on Twitch? What's the time frame here?
I had thought about it for a while there, but I can't. I don't know. I think maybe for this winter time might be a good time for me to start.
Yeah.
So
well, in the meantime, you're always welcome to join us on stream if you like. Others in the chat as well. With Splinterlands TV, we have, I think, some flexibility in that regard. So definitely appreciate your viewpoint, appreciate your time, coming on stream and sitting down for 2 hours with the community and sharing your knowledge. And it's been great.
Gold foil.
Yeah.
Nice one. Yeah, no, thank you for having me on. It's always fun to just kind of discuss with someone, the ins and outs, and kind of decide your plans for what you're doing next. So
yeah, absolutely. I think, again, these conversations, I think, benefits everyone that's involved, right? Anyone that's listening, anyone that's participating, because again, I think there's strength of ideas in numbers, right? You can really, I think, kind of riff off other people's ideas and lead to other good ideas and concepts, and that's where I think a lot of the growth in the community can come from, is just good interaction with the content creators and good discussion. So I think that's what it's all about, especially as we're looking to continue to grow the community.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, that's just like you just done the talk last night about possibly doing the Chaos Legion pack trade in. The Chaos Legion pack trade in for possibly a promo thing. That was just from a discussion that we are having in After Sound stream, that someone brought that up, and it seemed like it was a great idea. So it's great to. I mean, this is the community kind of building up things. It's fun to be a part of.
yeah, and again, it's not very many games that you can participate in, and the community can have a voice in what gets prioritized or worked on or included in the game. I mean, there's a lot of there's a long list, so we're gonna have to wait in a queue for some of these ideas to bear fruit. But at the same time, if you want to change something like in, I don't know, pick any game that you might play on the Web 2 side, it's probably not going to change anytime soon. So, with that being said, everyone, thanks so much for hanging out with us on stream. Until next time, keep stacking those stats.